Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson at 3 and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at KBC.com, and your on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, KBC.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. Stay with us at 6 o'clock this evening for the Way Home radio show and podcast presented by the Union Rescue Mission. I'll be back on the air this evening with Mark Hood, the CEO of the Union Rescue Mission. We'll be on again at 6 o'clock this evening and every Thursday evening and talk about what's happening on the homeless front and homeless solutions here in Los Angeles. Surreal headlines today after the big election in New York, where the Democratic Socialist Zoran Mandami won the election this week. One of the headlines says New York City elects a Muslim socialist mayor. We'll talk more about this in just a moment, and a reaction continuing. Meanwhile, the stock market did have a winning day yesterday following the election, but today we did see a pullback. The Dow down nearly 400 points at 46,912. The S&P 500 down 76, and the NASDAQ down 446 points. Tech names leading the sell-off today include the magnificent one NVIDIA, pulling back more than $7 at 188 and change. Shares of Tesla dropping 3.5%. Tesla stock pulling back today on the ahead of the news that Elon Musk may become the first trillionaire. Yep, we've heard of the billionaires list, but it looks like Forbes magazine might have to soon issue a trillionaires list. We'll be talking more about that coming up here as well. As I mentioned, NVIDIA leading the tech sector lower today, dropping about 4% after Trump administration officials said the government had no intention of backstopping the AI industry overall, in reference to comments recently by OpenAI's CFO. According to Yahoo, White House artificial intelligence and crypto czar David Sachs wrote on X that there will be no federal bailout for AI. The U.S. has at least 5 major frontier model companies. If one fails, others will take its place, unquote. Sachs went on to say, in his words, I don't think anyone was actually asking for a bailout. That would be ridiculous, but company executives can clarify their own comments. That post was in response to remarks from OpenAI CFO Sarah Fryer during a Wall Street Journal conference earlier this week regarding the financing of computer chips. We see Airbnb stock moving higher today and after-hours trading after that company revenue growth came in better than expected in the third quarter. As the government shutdown continues with no end in sight, more tough news for air travelers with the news that the FAA will be cutting traffic by 10% at 40 major airports starting tomorrow, Friday, because of the ongoing government shutdown, flight delays, and cancellations widely expected. The impacted airports across more than 24 states include major ones, including Los Angeles, as well as the New York metropolitan area, Atlanta, Chicago, Orlando, and San Francisco, among others. Gas and oil prices coming down, but not here in California. We'll get an update on what's happening with oil industry analyst John Kilduff at Again Capital and CNBC contributor, longtime contributor to this program. New calls for further investigation into the handling of the devastating and deadly firestorms in the Los Angeles area earlier this year. We'll get an update from the Honorable Dennis Zine, former L.A. City Council member and retired LAPD sergeant with 50-plus years of service to the City of Angels. But first, joining us live now, Steve Forbes, chairman of Forbes Media, which includes Forbes magazine, author of numerous books, including Inflation, What It Is, Why It Is Bad, and How to Fix It. And it seems like yesterday when I attended his book signing at the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, when he wrote the book, How Capitalism Will Save Us, Why Free People and Free Markets Are the Best Answer in Today's Economy. Apparently they did not read that one in New York. Steve Forbes, thank you very much for joining us live this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Frank. I did send a copy free to the next mayor, figuring he likes free things, but it doesn't look like he's read the book.
Isn't that something? Give us your reaction to that big news in New York.
It's a shocker. It was expected, but the polls showed that he was ahead, 7, 8, 9 points ahead. But when he gave his victory speech on Tuesday night, I think some people were shocked by its tone. It was hardline, class-oriented warfare, Marxism, and no recognition at all about what makes a city prosperous. So in terms of the police, it looks like we're going to have problems there. The schools, he didn't back off at all in terms of ending the schools for students that look like they might be able to move ahead faster. And in terms of the city itself, people say, well, they'll have to get Albany to approve the tax increases he wants. But it now looks like a lot of Democrats are saying, well, this is the wave of the future. And so the legislature, which is overwhelmingly Democrat, may well go along with some of his things. So in terms of the city of New York, it's going to be an ugly period because when people like that get into office and they can't deliver all the freebies that they promised, and like free buses, which often get taken over. Cities have tried it, get taken over by the homeless and the drug addicts. Parents don't want kids in buses like that. That he will go for scapegoats, whether it's the Albany, the capital of where the legislature is, Donald Trump, corporate billionaires, Jews, unfortunately. They always look for scapegoats about why they can't deliver utopia. So that makes for a poison atmosphere. And what it means is you're going to find more and more businesses leaving New York, and businesses that might have started in New York are going to look for other places.
On there live with Steve Forbes, and we see this meme going around this week that Zoran Mandani, the new mayor of New York City, has already been named Florida Realtor of the Year for 2026. Are you hearing that there is going to be an exodus from New York because of the results of this election?
I think you'll see it after a few months. Some people are clutching to the idea that he can be stymied in office by the legislature and by the courts. I think that's a fantasy. He has a lot of power, even without the permission of Albany. And again, with the victory he has, with how well the Democrats did on Tuesday night around the country, including in blue states like Mississippi, I think that they're going to be in a position where they're going to try to accommodate Mamdani rather than try to thwart him, because they all know they have primaries next year, and they don't want to be primaried because they know the far left of the Democrat Party is well organized, works the neighborhoods, gets out the vote, and that's why he had the result on Tuesday night. By contrast, Andrew Cuomo, the former governor, waged a pitiful campaign, and many times it looked like his picture should be on those old milk cartons of missing people because he ran a very lackluster campaign. Only at the end did he come to life, and by then it was too late.
On there live with Steve Forbes, did you have the same feeling that the headlines the last day or two have been surreal?
The headlines have been surreal. And what I think the message, though, one of the messages for the Republicans and people of the center and right of center is they better make their case, a positive case. It's not enough to criticize people like Mamdani. Yes, there are going to be some disasters from him. We've seen it in other cities. But you have to have something positive to counter it. It just can't be criticism. And unfortunately, the Republicans have not done a good job of explaining the tax cut bill. The tariff thing is going to be a mess. The Supreme Court clearly is going to rule against the White House on that. You can't impose a tax by decree, executive order. You have to go through Congress or otherwise establish legal procedures. And so about 55%, I think, was the number of the tariffs that the president has pushed through. About 55% of them, that is about 6 out of 10, are going to be declared illegal. I don't think they'll be forced to refund what already has been paid in, but what it means is there's going to be uncertainty in the future on that, and probably a good thing. Taxes are not good for the economy.
On their line with
Steve
Forbes.
Fight, and by the way, Frank, we've got a fight coming up with the Federal Reserve. Are they going to cut rates again in December? They should. There's no reason why we have higher interest rates than just about any developed country in the world.
And that's why I have the right person on the air right now, speaking live to Steve Forbes. And among the proposals that's apparently on the table there in New York, Zoran Mandani talking about promising to make the city more affordable. We're hearing that word more often these days, affordability, planning to make it more affordable with a rent freeze and free services funded with the new millionaire's tax. How's that part going over there?
Not well. And any tax increases have to be approved by Albany, the capital of the state legislature, where the Democrats have a supermajority. and where they were encouraged by the results of the Tuesday night, even though in states like my home state of New Jersey or Virginia, yes, they're blue states, but the candidates for governor there, both of them try to portray themselves as moderate, not the kind of candidate that Mamdani is in New York. So, but the fact of the matter is, the people who believe in free enterprise have their work cut out for them. And that's creating the uncertainty that we finally saw reflected in the stock market today.
On the Air Live with Steve Forbes. And did you send him the inflation book for free, or did you send him the capitalism book? Like I said, it seems like yesterday, but it's hard to believe it was a number of years ago when they had the honor of meeting you, and I have that wonderful picture standing behind you as you were signing my wonderful book with my former news director, Ronnie Bradford, of blessed memory, and we were at your book signing back then. Are you going to send the new mayor some more books, maybe?
I'll try, but I'm not sure he's going to be an apt student for that kind of education. Not judging by the rhetoric he did on Tuesday night and by his desire to think that the way you tackle the affordability crisis is with more taxes, more regulation, more owners of regulations on business. That's not going to work. The best way to do it is ask why you have a housing affordability crisis in New York City and elsewhere. Take the state of California, and you find out the government regulations and all the procedures you have to go through to get something done, make it absolutely impossible to get something done. Just to take what it takes to get a housing development done in California, compare that timeline with what can be done in states like North Carolina, Georgia, Texas, or Florida, and you see why that California's housing costs are so outrageously high. Well, the same thing is true in New York, where they do already have rent control. He wants to make that worse. When you have rent control, the kind of housing that's built, apartments built, are for high-end people, because landlords are not going to take a risk where their margins, especially small landlords, where the margins are thin, and you're going to not get the money needed for repairs and to keep the building desirable. New York is the biggest landlord in New York, and it's under federal supervision now for the disastrous way they've run public housing in New York. And now the next mayor wants to have grocery stores that, of course, won't pay taxes, won't pay rent, but will still end up losing money. By the way, the supermarkets, their margins are very small, 1, 2, 3 cents on the dollar. And so you're going to get a guaranteed mess there.
Isn't that something? Another famous New Yorker, now a Floridian, President Trump, expected to lock horns with the new mayor. What do you see ahead on that relationship?
I think the president will try at first to appear reasonable, but Mamdani is going to want to use President Trump as a foil for his failed programs. He's going to request a lot of money. Some money was put aside during this government shutdown for a new tunnel, which, given the regulations we have today, take forever. That could have been done years ago, but with all the permissions and licensing and everything else, takes forever. So he's going to want to use President Trump, who's not popular in New York City, as a foil for Mamdani's own shortcomings. So, yes, that fight is inevitable.
All right. You mentioned it, the big Supreme Court hearing yesterday on whether President Trump can proceed with the tariffs as now presented. What do you think is going to happen with that?
I think the Supreme Court, judging from the questioning, rightly were very skeptical of the government's arguments. And I think the clinching question came from one of the justices when he asked the Solicitor General, who's the government lawyer defending the tariffs for President Trump and his administration, was asked the question, given your interpretation, if the next president declares climate change to be a national emergency, that president would have the right to do so, to impose tariffs and other regulations. And Solicitor General had to acknowledge yes. And so I think that to sort of clinch the case, I think the Supreme Court will rule that only Congress can enact taxes.
And President Trump, speaking on Fox last evening, expressed concern about the outcome of all of this. What are the possible scenarios here?
Well, initially, I think there'll be uncertainty about how you unwind some of these tariffs he's put in place. They'll disappear in a matter of weeks when the Supreme Court rules against it. And then the president has to decide, is he going to try to get Congress to approve these broad-based tariffs or give him the power to impose taxes whenever he wants? And but I think it's actually going to be a benefit to the economy. Tariff is a tax. And if the U.S. goes ahead and has a good environment for regulations, which they're working on now, which I think will really begin to bear fruit next year, the tax bill that was passed this few months ago will really kick in next year in terms of improving the business investment climate. The fact that some people may get an actual tax cut, I think that'll be helpful. But the U.S. is a magnet for investment in this uncertain world. But we have the Federal Reserve with its foot still on the neck of the economy, and we have the uncertainty too of what's happening in the world. Ukraine is becoming a desperate situation right now, and unfortunately, the U.S. and Europe are not giving the Ukrainians the weapons they need to defend themselves adequately and push the Russians back just a little bit, so Putin doesn't get the idea that he can just wear them down, which he believes he can. So he's quite willing to sacrifice 10,000 of his soldiers a week to eat away at Ukraine and hope to break their morale and have NATO and the U.S. turn away.
On there live with Steve Forbes. While all this is happening, the U.S. government experiencing its longest shutdown in history because of gridlock there in Washington. And so we're not getting new readings on inflation or jobs. I guess there'll be no jobs report again tomorrow. And, of course, the Fed expected to make a decision on interest rates and the state of the economy next month. What do you think is going to happen next month?
I think the Federal Reserve, there's enough evidence out there that we have in some ways a strong economy, but other sectors a wobbly economy. So I think they will go for a 25 basis point cut and then make it clear they're going to wait for more evidence next year. But the whole idea that the Federal Reserve should be trying to direct the level of activity in the U.S. economy is very destructive. They should be focusing on a stable dollar, which they're not doing, which is why the dollar is weak against other currencies, which is preposterous in the world we have today. We have a much better economy than that of Japan or Britain or much of Europe, and yet the dollar has been barely holding its own against those currencies, which is preposterous. But that's because there's no lack of faith in the dollar, and that's one of the reasons why, by the way, the president and his Treasury Secretary should make it abundantly clear we don't want a weak dollar. President George W. Bush tried a weak dollar policy in the early 2000s, led to the crisis of 2008. Whenever you weaken your currency, you get trouble. So I hope they get that out of the way.
On there live with Steve Forbes, and following today's news, is there going to be a new list in Forbes magazine soon, the trillionaires list?
Yes, and the gazillionaires, the way things are going.
Elon Musk could become the first $1 trillion. They approved his compensation package worth up to $1 trillion today. That's the news this afternoon.
Well, he's got to get the company to deliver. And one of the things that investors have always reminded skeptics, the charge that Tesla is overvalued is it's been overvalued from day one. People don't see it as an EV, electric vehicle company. Yes, that's part of it. But they see it as a high-tech company doing very interesting things, including flying cars and driverless. We all know about driverless trucks and cars, but they're talking about now flying cars. I don't know how that's going to work, but people see it as the future. So, yeah, a lot of these stocks can be seen as overvalued, and so there'll probably be what they call a correction. I don't know why, Frank, when you have a downturn in the market, they call it a correction, like it's correct that the market goes down. But anyway, that's the word they use, and so that's inevitable. But the key thing is, are we establishing an environment where entrepreneurs can get ahead, start businesses, grow, and not get crushed by regulation and taxes? And tariff is a tax. So I think the Supreme Court's going to, in fact, rescue President Trump from excess tariffs.
Steve Forbes, thank you very much. We'll continue to watch you on the air as well as Forbes magazine for coverage on all of this. And I meant to tell you, my name was once on the cover of Forbes magazine. Yep, it was on the front cover in a white box. I saw my name. It even had my address and zip code, everything needed for the magazine to be delivered. But the bottom line is the name was on the cover of Forbes. I've been meaning to tell you that.
Well, you go to an amusement park, you may still find vendors who will put your picture on Forbes magazine. So have hope. You're still going to do it.
Mr. Forbes, thank you very much. It's always a thrill to speak with you. Thank you very much for taking the call live with us here on Mottek On Money, 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. Down day for the stock market today, with the Dow slipping nearly 400 points to 46,912. S&P 500 down 76 at 6720. And the NASDAQ tumbling 446 points to 23,054 as the big tech names pulled the market lower, including the magnificent one, NVIDIA, moving lower today by more than $7, back to 188 and change. We see Tesla down more than 16 at 445 and change. Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, Apple, all moving lower. Looks like Google was the only one in the plus column among the Mag 7. Among the cryptos here, we see Bitcoin up about 300 now at 101,200. Ethereum at 3,295. Solana back down to 154. And Doge at the moment at 16 cents. And now the latest news on 790 KABC.
Mic Drop. Hosted by former Navy SEAL Mike Ritland. It's raw.
So you do 4 platoons and 7 years at Team 3 when you go to the jump team.
Scariest job I had in the Navy until people started shooting at me.
Yeah.
It was a blast, though.
It's unfiltered.
At what point did you decide I'm done with the SEAL teams?
If you only knew how the Navy works, we don't have an enemy to fight, like we'll eat each other.
It's tough talk from the top minds in their field.
They're not looking for the best guy, they're looking for the right guy.
Yeah.
Mic Drop. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Good afternoon. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. Gas and oil prices coming down, but not in California. As a matter of fact, I just took a look. The national average for gas here in the United States, $3.08 a gallon. We're about $2 a gallon higher here in Southern California. $4.85 is now the average price for regular gas in the LA Long Beach area. $5.23 the average price for premium. That regular price here in LA is actually more than 30 cents a gallon higher than what it was a year ago. Diesel at $5.17 on average. That's about also 30 cents a gallon higher than where it was a year ago. This has the price of oil has cracked below $60 a barrel, and there's talk that prices could go even lower. Let's get an update now on what's happening with oil industry analyst John Kilduff at Again Capital and CNBC contributor, longtime contributor to this program as well. John Kilduff, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Good evening, Frank. Great to be speaking with you again.
Wonderful to have you with us here. John, take it from the top and tell us what's happening with gas and oil prices.
Well, the market got a bit of a scare there a couple of weeks ago when the Trump administration announced these potentially new and devastating sanctions against Russia, particularly their two largest oil companies, Rosneft and Lukoil. If you read them and you took them at face value, it would have foreclosed really finally Russia's supply to the global market. But that hasn't developed. The market has gotten comfortable that the supply will still continue to flow, although to a lesser degree. I think that's why you're seeing prices hold up a bit more than they were. If you recall, we were trending down towards 54. There's a lot of speculation we could break 50 even. I still think that's potentially in the cards here, particularly as we get into the new year in 2026 Q1. But for now, I don't think we're going to get there. But there's headwinds, Frank. There's oversupply. The only thing bothering me, just as a trader now, purely as a trader perspective, is that everybody and their brother is in on this trade from the short side. And when the enthusiasm in the commodity markets get loaded to one side of the boat, it generally flips back the other way. So you do have to be a little careful here. That rip higher we saw, last week back to 65 and change. Was indicative of that. You saw a lot of folks who had gotten in and sort of jumped on the bandwagon, got thrown off the bandwagon, and had to cover their positions. But as you mentioned, we're back under 60 today. U.S. refiners are in what we call their maintenance mode right now because they're getting ready to make winter fuels and maximize diesel fuel and heating fuel production. So that's a weakening crude oil as well, Frank, because obviously if the refiners are in shutdown mode, there's no demand for crude. So that's the other pressure point lower here on WTI pricing.
Very interesting. And oil prices moving lower despite tensions in the Caribbean with a focus on Venezuela. U.S. Special Operations helicopters, B-52s, and other military hardware has been moved into the Caribbean on the possibility of the U.S. striking Venezuela. I see the U.S. Senate today sunk the measure to block military action against Venezuela. Another report said the USS Gerald R. Ford, the The biggest aircraft carrier we have is now holding off of North Africa, and reports emerging that the president will not strike Venezuela anytime soon. What about this component here, and what would happen if the U.S. strikes Venezuela?
Well, certainly, Frank, if the U.S. were to strike Venezuela and there was upset in the country and we were to lose the rest of Venezuela's oil, and I say the rest of because that country's oil production has just been hollowed out by the mismanagement of President Maduro, who took over after Hugo Chavez. They've been looting the company, looting PDVSA, it's called, the state-run oil company, and they have also really ran off the major U.S. oil companies like Chevron, who they owe billions of dollars to. What's interesting, Frank, is that it'll be a sort of a bullwhip effect, because at first the supply will get crimped. Prices will jump on that, several dollars, not a lot. Like I said, Venezuela's pretty much been off the market for some time. But if a new friendly government is installed, and Venezuela's oil industry could get back on its feet rapidly, particularly if Chevron and Exxon were allowed to come back in and resurrect their projects and their operations. Forget about it. You talk about it, worried about a glut in 2026 now. Wait till you get Venezuela's oil back on the market, which is perfectly suited for the U.S. oil refining sector along the U.S. Gulf Coast. Our shale breadbasket isn't. Venezuela oil is. So it would actually end up being a very bearish or downward pressure on prices in the medium to longer term.
That is very interesting. And take a look at what's happening here in California with a couple of major refineries set to shut down. What's the outlook here in California? And as I mentioned, we're paying higher prices, not lower prices, despite the lower oil price, below $60 a barrel here.
Yeah, Frank, I'll tell you, I live in a sort of a corridor not too far from a couple interstates come together. There's a lot of truck stops, and we're paying $2.75 a gallon for regular gasoline out here in the northern New Jersey area. So it's really a stark difference, and it shows you, I think, bold-faced what poor policy, bad policy does. Maybe well-meaning. I know, a lot of care for the climate and everything else like that. But your oil companies there, your refiners in California have historically been great neighbors, very supportive of the community. This is the thanks they get, but now the thanks is being put on the California motorists. Frank, there's no relief in sight. We talked a couple of weeks ago about the potential for reversing some pipelines and getting some capacity out of the U.S. Gulf Coast out your way to California, but there's nothing coming, and there's no relief in the short term, Frank, and I think it's going to be a painful time at the pump for some time to come out your way.
That is tough news. On the line with John Kilduff, oil industry analyst at Again Capital and CNBC contributor. John, let me ask you this. From an investment standpoint, where are you placing your bets at this point in the oil patch?
So it's remarkable, Frank, actually. So you heard Exxon, Mobil, Chevron, they had great earnings this past week. Even in this low price environment, there's a research now that we've been looking into that Exxon has been really readying itself and girding itself to be profitable at $30 a barrel. They proved that last week. Tonight, this afternoon, EOG Resources reported that stock's up big in the after hours. They killed it. They raised their oil production in the shale basin from about 1 million barrels a day to 1.3 million barrels a day, so an additional 300,000 barrels from EOG. And that is in a sector or an oil patch that we keep hearing about, or people keep speculating about. You don't hear it from me necessarily, that there's a decline, the rig count's going down. Folks, let me tell you, the engineering of these oil companies, or the big oil companies, are just nothing short of remarkable. They continue to do and get more and more and more with less and less and less. Their break-evens keep coming down lower. Yes, this low-price environment isn't great for them. It is good for their refining operations, however, so you have that when you have a major integrated, but you also have the companies like EOG who can make a lot of money and do very well in this low-price environment. So those are the companies you got to look for. EOG, Diamondback. If you get any kind of a pullback, you should be buying them, particularly when prices are this low, because they're not going to go much lower. And most of the companies have a solid dividend track record, even in the absolute worst of times. I remind everybody that during the pandemic, when oil prices went negative, ExxonMobil went and sold billions of dollars of bonds to be able to fund the dividend. And that's how sacred it is to the bigger companies like that.
Fantastic, John. Thank you very much for that thorough analysis. Always great to speak with you. That is leading oil industry analyst John Kilduff at Again Capital and CNBC contributor and certainly very grateful that he's been a longtime contributor to this program. John, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Always my pleasure, Frank. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Out to the freeways now, 790 KBC.
November is heating up for U.S. soccer.
The United States need to be a little more nasty.
Big international friendlies for the men.
Oh, Callum, that was nasty.
And a Black Friday friendly for the women.
The expectations have always been here for this team. We understand that.
Listen anywhere on the go with the Westwood One Sports app. And for behind-the-scenes stories, catch the U.S. Soccer Podcast.
Boy, do we have an episode for you.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. Big report out this week. The after-action report on the Palisades fire. This was released by the Los Angeles Police Department. A 92-page after-action report that highlighted miscommunication and poor coordination with other agencies during the deadly Palisades fire in January. The report did praise LAPD officers for their heroic actions during the January inferno that ripped through the Palisades, as well as Malibu, and, of course, to the east. Altadena was hit hard in that fire, but the situation here in Los Angeles found that communication was poor between the LAPD and Los Angeles City Fire Department. Although both agencies, the report said, worked out of the same command post, developing shared strategies proved to be challenging. And at times there was also uncertainty over who was in charge, according to that report. Meanwhile, an April 21st trial date, 2026, has now been set in Los Angeles federal court for the 29-year-old former Uber driver accused of setting a New Year's Day fire, that prosecutors say smoldered for a week and then grew into what became the Palisades fire that killed more than 10 people. Joining us live now, the Honorable Dennis Zine, former L.A. City Council member and retired LAPD sergeant with 50-plus years of service to the City of Angels. Dennis Zine, thank you very much for coming to the line.
You're welcome, Frank, and good afternoon to you and your listeners.
Good afternoon. First of all, your reaction to that big report that came out this week.
No surprise. LAPD is understaffed. The fire department's understaffed. The politicians of Los Angeles have not done what they need to do to provide public safety for the population of this expanding city. And that's the problem. We have people in political office who do not put forth the dollars and the emphasis on public safety. We see the LAPD shrinking in numbers. We have fewer and fewer officers handling calls. We have more and more frustration in the community. And the fire department, with their resources, are not adequate. And clearly, when you see ADUs popping up everywhere, in all these neighborhoods, you got more and more residents, more and more congestion. You need personnel and resources, equipment to handle those tragedies that occur. And God forbid we have another major earthquake, how we're going to scramble with our number of officers and firefighters. I met with Jamie Moore, who's been named the new fire chief, who will be hopefully confirmed by the council. Dedicated firefighter, years of experience. He's going to be leading the organization. We need additional dollars to appropriate so they can have the personnel and the equipment. At one time, you had to be a paramedic in order to be a firefighter. They dropped that standard because they couldn't get enough paramedics. So you've got firefighters who are strictly firefighters, not firefighters, paramedic. That was a plan at one time. What happens is they implement a plan. The city politicians implement a plan, and then we never hear afterwards until years later, oh, by the way, that plan was scrapped because of this, because of that. This city has tremendous mismanagement, and the people, the taxpayers, the residents, the visitors, the ones who are suffering. And we got the Olympics coming to town. It's going to take a tremendous amount of personnel. I worked the 84 Olympics. I know the drain on personnel, and you still have additional activities you need to do to protect society with your law enforcement, your firefighters, your other services. We don't have it. So what, we run by crisis, and then we do a report that says, oh, by the way, we didn't have adequate resources, adequate personnel, properties damaged, and innocent people die. We need to have a city council that pays attention and does what they need to do, and work with the mayor, work with the chiefs of police, the chief of the fire, so we can finally have a city that is safe for everyone. And as I'm traveling down the road, there goes a police car, red light and siren down the street.
One police car.
One police car, red light and siren, going to an emergency call. Code 3 call, they sent them red light and siren. In traffic, and traffic is tremendous. They've got to funnel through traffic to get to the destination. I mean, And New York, I understand today, 100 New York police officers have resigned. I'm sure there's many more that are going to resign under the new administration in New York. We're at some very crisis points in this city, this country, and somebody needs to pay attention and change things before we have more victims than tax-paying public.
It is to be noted the fire chief of New York City resigned yesterday as well. Now, getting back to what happened here in the Palisades, hurricane force winds mixed with fire was an absolutely terrifying, horrific, and indeed deadly situation that devastated an area larger than Manhattan. That whole area there, Palisades and Malibu, and absolutely horrific. And a big part of the story was trying to evacuate people there. It was an absolutely chaotic and horrific situation. We've talked to some people here about what it was like in traffic with the firestorm all around them. What do you think is going to be done to address evacuation plans in the future, given what's happened?
Well, clearly we didn't have enough resources, and I was part of that contingency when they called up all the personnel that they could to secure the area because of looters and other activities taking place in Pacific Palisades, which, interesting, was my first division, West L.A., back in 1968 when I became an L.A. police officer. So I was very familiar with the area, and I know friends that lived there in the past. They lost their homes, but we didn't have adequate resources. The bottom line is this city is understaffed with police officers and firefighters, clearly understaffed, and we're not seeing any improvement in that. That's a problem. You need to have contingency plans when crisis breaks out. We're on one communication system, the fire department's another communication system, and it's all about dollars and cents. And until the elected officials decide to make it a priority for public safety, we're going to continue crippling along the way. And you shouldn't be running a city like that, especially when you got world events coming to this city in the very near future. You need to brace up, gear up, and train people. We're not at that point, and I don't know when we're going to be at that point with the way the city council is operating in the city of Los Angeles. It's terrible. It's frightening, and the taxpayers need to wake up and say, enough is enough of this.
It is to be noted, the current Los Angeles District Attorney Nathan Hochman just marked his first year following the election. A year ago, he spoke at City Club Los Angeles yesterday, and he's scheduled to be on this program a week from today. What's your reaction to how things have changed over the last year?
I know our District Attorney Nathan Hochman, he's a tremendous prosecutor. He's very concerned. He's very committed to his position as the elected District Attorney of Los Angeles County. He's doing everything in his power. But again, he needs to work with the Board of Supervisors of LA County. They appropriate the dollars. They appropriate the dollars so he can hire personnel, train personnel, and adequately make sure that his offices run properly so the innocent are set free and the guilty are sent to prison. It's very clear. But the County of Los Angeles recently gave an individual, a county employee, who filed a lawsuit saying because of the new election of a city manager, she was afraid she might lose her job. They gave her $2 million. This lady's employed by the County of Los Angeles, still employed, and the county rolled over and gave her $2 million because she complained. That's absurd. This is the way the counties, the city, and we can go into it deeper and deeper, but the bottom line is that taxpayers are not getting their fair share of what they're paying in tax dollars. They are not being treated fairly. They don't have the adequate protection that they need to protect themselves, their business, and their families, period.
Well, I have to say the DA, Nathan Hochman, gave a very compelling speech on his one-year anniversary before the LA World Affairs Council yesterday, and we look forward to hearing directly from him. And, of course, appreciate it very much, Dennis Zine, and hopefully LA will be able to reclaim its Olympic glory. When you mentioned 1984, I flash back to that wonderful vision of Rayford Johnson lighting the Olympic cauldron at the Coliseum, and what a moment that was for you and for everyone, I'm sure.
It's a memory that I'll always remember, and all the Olympic pins that I was collecting during the time, the keepsakes I have, we had sufficient resources and personnel and the technology at that time to do the job. The technology has changed. We haven't kept up with it, and hopefully the leaders of LA City politics will wake up and do what they need to do.
The Honorable Dennis Zine, former LA City Council member, retired LAPD sergeant, 50-plus years of service to the City of Angels. Thank you very much for coming to the line live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. Pull back for the stock market today. The Dow down just about 400. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz and then the Union Rescue Mission show and podcast coming up at 6 right here.
What's up, guys? David Pollack here, former Georgia Bulldog, former analyst with College Game Day, and host of my new show, See Ball, Get Ball. I'm a defensive lineman. That's why that's the name. You see the ball, you go get it. We're going to dive deep into college football. We're going to break down film. We'll have bold takes, real conversations with the biggest names in the sport every single week. If you eat, sleep, and breathe college football like I do, man, I promise you, See Ball, Get Ball is for you. So do me a favor, follow and listen on your favorite platform.